Dear viewers, in this video, we will try to analyze the work of I.A. Richards, Principles of Literary Criticism. I have already uploaded two videos on the chapter based on Principles of Literary Criticism, and by this video, I will do a analysis of the means crux of this book, means what the author was trying to say throughout his book. Okay, so I will not going to explain the thing because the explanation I have already done, and in this video uh, I will just read the the lines as it is written in this PDF. In Principles of Literary Criticism, I.A. Richards set out to establish a theoretical framework for criticism which would free it from subjectivity and emotionalism. He has isolated observation which could make profitable starting points for reflection, but they provide no answer to the central question of criticism, that what is the value of the arts and what is their place in the system of human endeavors. Richard proposes a psychological theory of art. Art is valuable because it helps to order our impulses. And in the second chapter, The Phantom Aesthetic State, he dismisses the concept of a special aesthetic state. He said that modern aesthetics, starting with Kant, rest on the assumption that there is a special kind of pleasure which is disinterested, universal, unintellectual, and not to be confused with the pleasures of sense or ordinary emotions. They believed that art experience was a special kind of experience in a class of its own, not uh, not to be compared with the experiences of ordinary life. Richard feels that there is no such special mode. The aesthetic experience is not a new or different kind of thing. It is similar to ordinary experiences. Richard uses a very graphic analogy to explain this point. When we look at a picture or read a poem or listen to music, we are not doing something quite unlike what we were doing on our way to the gallery or when we dressed in the morning. This is taken from page number 10 of the said book. He mentions ordinary activities like putting on clothes or walking down to an art gallery to emphasize his point that art experience is not of a fundamentally different kind. Art experience is more complex and more unified. Those who believe in a special aesthetic state would postulate a peculiar, unique value for it. Richard believes that aesthetic experiences are not sui generis, means unique. That is, they do not merely have intrinsic value. It is possible to analyze art experience and examine its value in terms of ordinary life because it is not a special state cut off from ordinary life. According to I.A. Richards, the two pillars upon which a theory of criticism must rest are an account of value and an account of communication, which was mentioned in page number 18 of the said book. Richards believes that the human mind has developed because it is an instrument for communication. The arts are the supreme form of the communicative activity, which was also mentioned in page number 18 if you read the book. Of course, the artist himself may not be conscious of this. He is not, as a rule, deliberately and consciously engaged in a communicative endeavor, which was also mentioned in page number 18. The artist is concerned with getting the work right, regardless of its communicative aspect, whether it is a poem or a play or a statue or a painting. The artist is wholly involved in making the work embody his experience. He cannot stop to consider the communicative aspect. It is always there at a subconscious level. The very process of getting the work right involves enduing it with great communicative power. Efficacy for communication is a main part of the rightness, according to Richard. Rogers also mentions that criticism should not concern itself with the avowed or undeclared motives of the artist. Richards believes that the mental processes of the poet are not a very profitable field for investigation. It is dangerous to try to analyze the inner workings of the artist's mind by the evidence of his artistic work. It is not possible to verify what went on in the artist's mind, means what was going on the artist's mind when he has composed that kind of work, or that kind of creation, artistic creation. Just as we cannot be sure what goes on in a dreamer's mind. Very often, the most plausible explanation of the artist's mental processes may be quite wrong. To prove this point, Richard takes up Samuel Taylor Coleridge's famous poem Kubla Khan. I am sure you would be familiar with the poem and may have heard that Coleridge wrote it under the influence of opium. Critics like Graves have presented a complex psychological explanation for the source of the imagery in the poem. Richard points out that the explanation is much more simpler. Coleridge was influenced by Milton. Richard examines lines 223 to 283 from Paradise Lost, Book 4. He quotes many lines from Milton's poem to establish it as the source of the underground river, the fountain, and the Abyssinian maid singing of Mount Abora of Coleridge's poem. Richard brings up this example to show the difficulties of speculating about the poet's mental processes. He feels that it would be a wrong application of psychology. Richard believes that the arts can improve the quality of our lives by communicating valuable experiences. So he considers value is one of the most prominent tool in criticism. It is not easy to communicate complex experiences. Richard believes that the arts provide the only way of doing so. In the arts, we find the record in the only form in which these things can be recorded of the experiences which have seemed worth having to the most sensitive and discriminating persons. He believes that the arts are our storehouse of the recorded values. He gives a very high place to the artist. He is the point at which the growth of the mind shows itself. Literary criticism should concern itself with value. Richard believes that art for art's sake is wrong. He declares the critic is as closely occupied with the health of the mind as the doctor with the health of the body, which was also mentioned in his work, lesson book, page number 25. He says that it is wrong to consider value a transcendental idea. Metaphysical or ethical considerations should be kept out of literary criticism. He proposes a psychological theory of value. Anything is valuable which satisfies the impulses or appetencies, as he calls them. These desires or aversions may be conscious or they may operate at the subconscious level. Appetencies include both conscious and unconscious desires, because the more important appetencies may be ones which are not consciously felt. So Richards defines value as anything is valuable which will satisfy an appetency without involving the frustration of some equal or more important appetency, which is also mentioned in page number 36. This naturally raises the question: which are the important appetencies? Richard believes that the importance of an appetency can be caused by the extent to which other appetencies which will be disturbed by the thwarting of the impulse involved. That is, the importance of an impulse can be judged by the way it involves other impulses. If the impulses are properly organized, a maximum number can be satisfied. He proposes a kind of psychological Benthamism, where value lies in the number and importance of impulses satisfied within the individual mind. Okay, we have more to read. States of mind are valuable is so far as they involve coordination of activities as opposed to curtailment of them. Richard says that the function of the arts is to organize our impulses. The effect of art is the resolution, interanimation, and balancing of impulses, which was also mentioned in page number 113. In some respect, Richard's theory resembles Aristotle's catharsis, which suggested that the function of tragedy was to restore emotional balance. Later researches into psychology and neurology have shown that the workings of the human brain and psyche are much more complex. Richards had proposed a very simplistic process, and his psychological theories have become outmoded with the passage of time. Moreover, it is difficult to accept the high claims Richard makes for art as an ordering of the mind. In the words of Rain Wellak, if we think of the poets, there is ample evidence that Richard's view of poetry as an ordering of the mind and the making of a perfect human being is false. There were madmen, suicides, scoundrels, and many horribly unhappy and disorganized men even among the great poets. Richards was one of the first to indicate the importance of the response of the audience. Beauty is not inherent in physical objects, but a character of some of our response to objects. But he did not investigate this theme of subjectivity further. Critics of reception theory and reader response schools like Hans Robert Joss, Wolfgang Iser, David Bledge, and Stanley Fish have presented much more sophisticated and far-reaching analysis of the response of the reader. The value of Richard as a critic lies more in his theories of language and the methods of practical criticism he proposed. Now, Richard's on language. This thing we will read in our next, not next, now too we can read. Okay, according to Richards, he said that there are two uses of language. One is scientific and the other is emotive. uh, in his first book, The Foundations of Aesthetic, which was published in 1922, which was co-authored with the two friends of his undergraduate days, O.K. Ojin and James Wood, he continued his collaborator